Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Indie Zone. My name is Kathy. Very early on, in fact, episode 3 of the Indie Zone podcast identified what appeared to be an error in the timeline documenting the whereabouts of Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, in the few hours before the start of the crimes as alleged and asserted by the prosecution of November 13th, 2022, commencing sometime shortly after 4 o'clock a.m. at 1122 King Road. In episode 3 of the Indie Zone podcast, we raised the question of how could Kaylee and Madison possibly be in two places at one time, as page 3 of the affidavit of probable cause signed by Detective Brett Payne on December 29th, 2022, been possible. We pointed out that at page 3 of that affidavit of probable cause, Detective Payne wrote that Madison and Kaylee were at the Corner Club bar in Moscow at 1:30 a.m. and apparently simultaneously were also at the parked grub truck, food truck, at 1:30 a.m., which was located down the road on Main Street in Moscow from the Corner Club. We now have evidence from the files released yesterday, July 23rd, that seems to suggest another timeline altogether. I'm referring to the November 15th, 2022 report, which was written at 10:06 a.m. that morning, documenting a meeting that began at 9:30 a.m. on November 15th. This is 2 days after the date of the crimes, which was November 13th, 2022. Here, Captain Roger Lanier, who is now retired, but who was during the investigation into these crimes up through the time of Mr. Kohberger's arrest on December 30th, 2022, was the face of the Moscow Police Department along with Chief James Fry. Whenever there were any press or interviews given from members of the Moscow Police Department, it was primarily, if not exclusively, by one of two representatives of the Moscow Police Department, either Chief Fry or Captain Lanier, or both. In returning to this report of Captain Roger Lanier, who, by the way, is retired, he retired in 2023 from the Moscow Police Department. It addresses a meeting that Captain Lanier, along with another representative of the Moscow Police Department, a name that is probably very familiar to you if you've been watching and following the case, Detective Lawrence Mallory, went to the Corner Club that morning. The purpose was to confirm that Madison Mogen and Kaylee Gonzalez were at the Corner Club, as had been reported, and to try to identify the individuals seen on the grub truck video later in the morning. Now, for purposes of our analysis here. We're going to focus on the timeline. You can certainly read this report and other reports that were released for more information regarding the second purpose for this meeting. But in strictly looking at this report, if you go to the last paragraph, page 1, it says that at 1:31 a.m., blank paid his bar tab with his CC, consisting of, and it gives what he paid for. After paying, he walked to the back of the bar, went into the restroom, came back out, retrieved his coat, and came back to an area near the exit where Gonzalez and Mogan were waiting. Blank waited in the background while the girls finished conversing with others. Then they all exited the building at 1:37 a.m. The parking lot camera shows them walking away together, across, then out of the parking lot in a westerly direction. So, what we now know from Captain Roger Lanier's report is that Kaylee and Madison were both at the corner club, in the parking lot, and in the vicinity that was still visible from the parking lot camera through at least 1:37 a.m. and possibly even 1:38 a.m. or approaching that time when they were no longer visible on the camera. There had to have been a couple of minutes of a walk if they continued walking to the grub truck, where they're then seen on video that is published on the internet. If you haven't seen it, you can pull it up. But we see here that there is a large discrepancy between the time that the affidavit of probable cause stated that Madison and Kaylee were at the corner club, possibly up to 8 minutes of a difference. If there is an error in this timeline, I ask the rhetorical question under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, freedom of speech and of the press, what other errors in the timeline might there possibly be for the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022? This is Kathy. Thank you for joining us today.